All right, so we have just found out that Ashes may well get a second shot with an Ashes 1.5 reboot. We're here with Isaac Vega, was the lead designer of Ashes 1.0, and then also Nick Conley, who is now the lead developer, was the lead playtester. Thank you guys so much for being here. I just want to start with you, Isaac, because you came down here for Ashes weekend, what seems like decades ago, but it was not too long ago. And we had a great time, great weekend, tons of incredible games of Ashes being played at that point. And that was when you dropped the Rin section, those two Phoenix Born that came out. What does it feel like? How is it for you to see that this game might get a second shot?
Well, Ashes has always been near and dear to my heart. I loved working on that project when I was first initially thinking about it and seeing the development that it has taken throughout the entire course of that game, and the fandom and the connection that I've been able to have with other people around that game, the friendships that I've seen come from that game, the people that I've been able to meet, interact with, people that we've been able to hire because of that game. And it's just been so special to me what Ashes has been able to do. And I have always hoped and dreamed that eventually it would continue past its eventual falling off, like with what ended up, we announced, I believe, last year that it was coming to a close. And I was always hoping that someday it'll come back, and I did not expect it to be this soon. To tell you the truth. So to see it come back, and Colby so enthusiastic to go ahead and see the game be brought back to life now that Plaid Hat is independent again has been really nice to see. I've been really excited about a lot of the stuff that Nick's been working on, and to see some of the characters that I've always hoped getting a little bit more focus and being brought back to life, and just some of the errors of first time development of an LCG and these kinds of card games being fixed, and hopefully seeing the fandom kind of revitalized with it is really hopeful for me. So I'm super excited, and very hopeful that it could really kind of have the chances that I feel like there was so much ups and downs throughout the beginning of the course of Ashes being out in the public. And I'm hoping now that Plaid Hat is going to be on its own. It's more stable. There's going to be a lot more focus and ability to bring it to the audience in the way that they're hoping to see it continue, and having it have really good support and really good just upkeep with the amount of care that's gone into the design moving forward. So I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
Now, a quick question, Isaac. Some people watching may not be super familiar with Ashes or you as a designer. So where does Ashes, I may be totally wrong in this, but in my head, for some reason, you mentioned it was your first kind of expandable card game design experience. Where does this sit in your kind of design catalog of things you've made, your portfolio? That's a better way. I was searching for the word and I couldn't find it.
Ashes was the fourth game I ever released. It was released after Dead of Winter, year after Dead of Winter in 2015. And since then I've designed quite a few more games. I've been sticking to about one a year since initially starting off in, I believe, 2013 was, or 2012. I don't remember. Anyways, it's been 10 years. And I have about 9 games since then.
That's nice. Fantastic. Nick, I was going to pop over to you. So you were the lead playtester, as I understand it, for Ashes all throughout kind of that space in 1.0. And now you're coming in as lead developer and actually getting to make or implement changes that I assume you may have previously otherwise just kind of suggested or maybe didn't. And now I've seen that, things out in the wild and said, oh, maybe we didn't catch that one. So what's it like for you to jump into this role and have a real formative ability with this game?
It's so exciting. This is the best job ever. I'm just really excited to have a chance to address some of the things in Ashes that were formerly untouchable, whether it was a rules thing or just with so many cards written or printed in a certain way or doing a certain thing. we can go back to the drawing board on so many more things and try out new ideas after kind of having several years of experience with the game and with the system and this whole card pool. There's been a lot of exploration already done in the system, and this is just a great time to try some new approaches to things.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be about 30% or so of the original card base that's going to get kind of a revamp or a rejuvenation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in particular? Can you name one thing, one concept, one rule, or even one card that you always kind of had your eye on that you thought, man, this could just be a little bit different, a little bit better, it'd make the whole game sing?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges I think players had when playing Ashes at any level was kind of the timing resolution of things. We ended up with a lot of cards with triggered abilities, which basically say when some event happens, do another thing. And with so many of these cards being on the table because of the way Ashes has the spell board, you have a bunch of spells ready to go at any time. You have a bunch of units with abilities ready to go at any time. Just at an instant, you could have this domino effect of so many triggered effects. And while those are pretty common things to have in card games, it makes a lot of sense, of course. When you have too many of them and a system that's not really ready to handle that, it just gets really overwhelming. So I'm looking to streamline a lot of those triggered abilities into activated abilities that really focus on one of the core mechanics of Ashes, which is the main action and the side action. The game already has this built-in back and forth a lot. You take 2 actions on your turn, and there's 2 different types. You have the main action and the side action. So you already have a really dynamic back and forth interaction between your players. So instead of ready spells having those triggered abilities, I use the old example, Chant of Revenge for this. It's an Ashes card. It says when one of your units dies, deal a damage to another target, which is really simple. It's a pretty basic effect for a card game, but changing that to a system where it doesn't happen the instant the unit is destroyed, and then creating that domino effect. Instead, it can charge up basically by putting a token on it. And then on your turn, you can now use one of your side actions to activate the effect that you got for meeting the condition at an earlier point.
You don't know how much that makes me excited. That's like the best answer possible.
Dying over here.
So
that was the greatest thing I've ever heard.
That makes me want to ask a question, and I'm curious to get both your takes on this. On the podcast recently, on our podcast, we do a weekly podcast called the Covenant Cast, and we're doing a mini series called How to Ruin a Game. And there's a lot of ways to ruin a game.
Ashes hasn't been featured yet. I'll have you know.
It will be featured. It's going to be prominently featured, as you can imagine, this week.
Awesome.
But the first episode we did, we talked about what we call first principles. So we talk a lot about the DNA of a game, the fundamentals of a game. What is it that makes a game the game, right? The game that you get into, the game you obsess about, and how over time a lot of designers, to keep things interesting, will push a design and add new things until eventually the game that's being played doesn't feel or look like the game that people fell in love with up front. So for both of you, and take whoever goes first.
I want to start with Isaac.
I want to start with Isaac.
So let's see if we have some disagreements.
I'm just curious. I think that's a really good example. Is why I bring it up that you mentioned, which is one of the core things that makes Ashes, and why I think it was so notable, particularly in 2015 when we first ran into it. There's a lot of reasons it was notable, but one of them was this distinct, I go, you go action back and forth. And then the further you get away from that, the less it feels like Ashes to me. So that might be one of the first principles that we call them. But I'm curious what you think the unchangeable qualities of Ashes that makes Ashes are. What do you think, Isaac?
Interesting. So because I've kind of handed over, I've really allowed Nick to see, hey, you're the one who has a brain that functions in this way. Because the truth is that when I came to design Ashes, I designed Ashes as my kind of response to other card games that I was like, why does this work this way? And why does this work this way? And I just didn't like these other functions. But I wasn't necessarily thinking so much about oh, I didn't see how this could lead to this problem and this problem and this problem. That's where I needed brains like Nick and our other lead playtester at a time, Bob, as feedback in order to have that kind of process and thought. And it's like, every single time we add something, it creates this domino effect that just has so many different possibilities. And with trying to make the game as interesting as possible, you want to add these new effects and these new openings and these new windows in which able to do interesting things and create interesting dynamics and make each of the characters unique and the card play unique. So for me, I'm really open to anything that would make people like Nick and other playtesters very excited to play the game again. The process for me, the things that I need to see stay the same, is that the integrity behind how the characters worked, how the card styles worked, obviously I still want the spell board and the dice and all of these aesthetics that make Ashes, and the main action and side action way of they function and them going back and forth, I still feel is core to what Ashes belongs. But all the little tweaks in between are completely game. And I feel like Nick has very much found all of the issues that those little interactions can cause, and streamlining it in a way that makes Ashes more pure and more of what Ashes was intended to be in the beginning. I feel like it would have been this if I had an entire team to develop Ashes from the beginning. But now that we have so much experience, so many people coming in, so many people that know what Ashes is and the intention of what they want Ashes to become on board to make this happen, it really helps hone down and make Ashes still its own unique thing, but at the same time just a heightened level of it in a way that I feel has also become simpler and easier for new people to come on board. So I'm everything is possible. I'm a person that is always taking his designs and it's like, nope, I'm gonna rip them in half and throw them in the trash. And we're gonna start over and do whatever. So I mean, I'm not adverse to anything changing, but I think all of the changes that have happened so far are still very much in line to the core of what people want from Ashes. So I'm very
Isaac,
happy with those changes.
can I ask you real quick? You said that Ashes was a kind of a counterpoint to what you had seen in card games in the past. Can you dive into that a little bit of like what you were trying to do differently or why you thought it was worth doing differently?
So for me, one of the things that was very hard with a lot of the collectible card games that I grew up with, and that a lot of people that were very popular and still are very popular to this day, was the level of entry was very difficult for a lot of people. For me, growing up low income in a low income family and household, I wanted to make sure to make a card game that was self-contained, that had a lot of possibilities in one box, that had the ability to deck build almost completely freely between characters in order for you to kind of create something that was unique to you, and for everybody to have access to all of these things. So that was step one. I wanted to make sure that was the case. The other thing is that I hated mana buildup and having to take so many turns in order to feel like a powerful character. I wanted my players to feel like they were powerful from the very beginning. So that's what the creation of the first 5 kind of came into play. The creation of the dice as usability, as your mana pool, essentially, to be able to pay for your cards and do what you wanted to do. I always thought it was ridiculous that characters had to, like, I am this powerful person. That is the narrative of what I'm telling the players. You are a powerful person. You have an understanding, and you're going to fight. So come into this fight a little bit prepared. So I definitely wanted to have that feeling of, like, I'm starting off with, my best footing and the things that I want to do, because so many of these other types of games, you would build the perfect deck, and then you draw the worst possible combination of cards and your deck would completely fall apart. And I didn't want people to have that feeling. I wanted people to have the feeling, if I built something, I'm going to see that take place. I'm going to see that come to life because I spent all this time, all this effort putting this together. And it may not work out exactly like I was hoping, but it's going to work out somewhat the way that I was intending it for it to go. So I wanted those aspects to take place, but there still needs to be that push and pull of chance, which the dice helped out with a lot. Also, the push and pull of like being able to manage the situation, seeing the board in front of you. You don't want everything to be so cookie cutter and understood. You want to have that drama of like, oh my gosh, any decision that I make is going to lead to a possible interesting pathway. So you want to be able to still see those things kind of randomly happen, which still has some random chance in Ashes to create some of that drama. But those were really the biggest things that I was trying to fix, because I think with a lot of people, they put so much time and love and care into developing the characters and their decks and what they want to see come out of it, that I want to see when they hit the table, they're able to do that, and that was my biggest thing.
So Nick, hearing all of that, what you've taken probably, it seems like maybe a more nuanced look at the game. Isaac's kind of bringing the big ideas, and then you're saying, well, I don't think that'll exactly work very well given these 20 other cards. So what would you say are kind of those first principles, the things that you feel are so essential to Ashes that if you were to remove them, it wouldn't be Ashes Rise to the Phoenix Point anymore?
Yeah, so to me, the dice system is just sacred of Ashes. Both players have 10 dice of different magic types in their pools that you roll each round, and depending on the symbols you roll, you can cast those, or you can spend those to cast your different spells and summon your different creatures. And one thing that I think we've actually been able to enhance about the dice system was changing and removing some of the ways Ashes 1.0 interacted with each other's dice pools. So the fundamental disruption in dice was the illusion dice power in original Ashes that let you spend one of your dice to pick one of your opponent's dice and remove it for the round, which was very powerful and very disruptive, and I think unintentionally prevented players from being able to play some of those things and like kind of meet that dream that Isaac was talking about of being the powerful character and I can do what I want to. And because this illusion magic could disrupt your opponent so much, you couldn't get as creative or expressive with your dice builds, because if you had one of a certain color of magic, it could be taken away at any time, and then you lose all access to that type for that round, which can be pretty devastating. So in Ashes 1.5 coming up, we are getting rid of any form of straight dice exhaustion of your opponent's resources. So you won't be controlling it that way.
You're saying all the right things.
Oh my gosh,
we literally we played a game last week just so we could refamiliarize ourselves, because the last time I think I truly was active in playing was that summer of 2016, probably like after Ashes weekend and whatnot. And we played, and then like I remember I had because I had decks built that I had never taken apart, and so we were playing, and I had 2 dice of one color, and then I had 4 and 4 of 2 other colors. And Steven had the illusion dice, and he hit 2 of the symbols to remove my dice. And I was looking at my hand, and I was like, well, I need this 1 die, or I can't play 3 of these cards. And then he's like, I'll take that one away. And I was like, oh. And then he's like, I'll take that one away. So a really good illusion player, I assume, the game could get way too control-y. And so then instead of doing something, you're just preventing your opponent from doing something.
Absolutely.
The thing I love about Ashes is that back and forth of, I'm controlling you by putting something in your way that you have to deal with, not stopping you from doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about with the dice system. So we still want players to be able to interact on like the play space of dice, but in a much less punitive way. So the illusion dice power is going to be changing to affect the faces of your opponent's dice. So
Nice.
The dice on Ashes have 3 different faces on them. They all share basic magic on them, and then they start to differentiate into their different classes of magic. And then there's the lucky 1 side on the die, which is your power side, which lets you play the best cards of your class of magic. And they also have an innate ability themselves. So getting those power dice are really powerful. So the illusion dice power now will spin down 2 of your opponent's dice 1 stage. So the power dice goes down to class, and then a class die would go down to a basic. So you can still interact with your opponent's options like that, and force them to find ways to fix their dice to play what they want to, but you're not just outright saying you're losing access to charm magic or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything beyond the dice themselves you would say that kind of speak to the essence of the game? Because one thing that Zach and I were musing about, I guess, a couple of weeks ago was like thinking about how much Ashes actually seem to do right from the start. I mean, you look at it, it's a game that has like, pre-constructed decks as expansions, basically, which was seen as a revolution for Marvel Champions. But it's like, well, I should have been doing that forever. You got rid of really, the card templating was gotten rid of, which we've been told is impossible. But it's like, no, you don't have these black borders and these little small art pieces that you have to deal with. You've even got the battlefield where you don't have to worry about a giant board state getting crazy out of control. So hats off to you for that, Isaac. But so Nick, do you anything in that vein that you see as essential?
Yeah, so nice of you to bring up battlefield. I think that is a really core part of Ashes, where each Phoenix-born character that you have can field a different number of units, and that's part of a balance thing between each character. So larger battlefields can build up big swarm attacks, or small battlefield characters can't quite defend against those big attacks, and they have to find ways to clear up space on their battlefield to make sure they can keep the units coming, because they can't just keep putting out new ones. So something we saw happen a lot in Ashes 1.0 that I thought could lead to negative play experiences were these battlefields clogging up with units and kind of bringing play to some stalemates, where neither player wants to take the first go at exhausting any of their units, whether it's through battle or effects. So we've made a couple of changes to the battle system of the game to kind of help alleviate some of this clogging of the battlefields.
All right. I can't wait to hear that one.
Yeah.
So it seems like if I were kind of outlining at least what's been discussed so far, from what Isaac said, right, there's like macro level, like ease of entry into a game, which will maintain the same vibe, even in 1.5. But really, from like a design perspective, you want the characters to feel awesome from the first turn. You want the characters to feel unique and like they're their own characters. You want the dice to be super relevant, and the choice of the dice colors that you're using to be super relevant. You want the action back and forth, like it's you do one thing, I do one thing, back a lot less reactive gameplay, a lot more in that kind of action system. And then what was the other thing?
Not clogging the battlefield.
Not having these like stalemate board states. Again, that's part of the pushing for the interactivity of the game. So is there anything else? That's a pretty good list, honestly. Like that.
Yeah, that's kind of a dream list.
That's a pretty good structure.
If I could put it together myself, that is about everything I could ask for, I think. Any surprises, Nick? Anything you got in your back pocket that you think players will be really excited about? What about the mount rules? Are the mount rules staying as they were? I've heard a lot of players say that was kind of I
had no idea there were like dinosaur mounts. Until recently. Anyways,
the car is amazing.
Yeah, that deck's a super fun theme. I mean, putting your allies on giant dinosaurs and swinging in for big damage is such a fun design challenge to do. But yeah, admittedly, they did end up a little bit more complex than I think was necessary. So the mounts are getting a rules change. Basically, the way they work is if you have an unexhausted ally on your battlefield, you can use your mount spell to flip the ally face down and then put a dinosaur on top of them. So you have this super mount unit. And the way mounts used to work is when the mount would be destroyed, the ally could come back into play exhausted or wounded. So it could kind of like continue the battle or pull back. But part of the timing issues that we were experiencing in the original rules system gave us some really unintuitive expressions of this mechanic. So it's simplifying down to just when the mount is destroyed, the ally goes back to your hand, which is nice and easy to do. And it also opens up this extra synergy for your allies with effects when they enter play. You can keep doing those effects and keep mounting them up. So I think they ended up as like a pretty fun, easy to use unit that are really cool.
Awesome. Hey, Isaac, I want to throw it back to you real quick. Just kind of, what's your dream of what Ashes could become, right? So like if this goes really well, let's say the 1,000+ people sign up and everything's good to go, and the game's in print and it continues to grow, and it keeps releasing expansions. Like, if you could see a couple of years into the future, what would you hope for?
So I remember walking through Gen Con the year that Ashes released, and I was talking to um, one of the members of Z-Man, and I was telling them, look at that poster up there. It was a huge banner, huge banner hanging up above the Gen Con doors, and it was for Magic the Gathering. And it's like, that's what I want Ashes to be one day. And I know that's still huge. That's still pie in the sky. But I'm like, dream big or go home. Like dream big. I would still love to see Ashes become something like Magic, where it's people know about it. Kids in middle school are discovering it every year. It's something that's happening all the time. And I would love that to be the case, because I had so many moments and so many stories. I had game store owners come up to me in low income areas, and it's like, my community loves this game. They're able to buy it, they're able to play it, and they can't always afford all of the other types of games that are out there and that are trying to get as much money out of the consumer as possible. And I would love to see Ashes become an alternative to that. For me, Ashes was about to be done a year ago, and for it to come back is just amazing gravy. And I hope for it to, if it just has the amount of community that it had last time, the amount of engagement that it had last time, that would still be amazing for me, because I saw the amount of friendships that came from that. Like I went to someone's wedding that I met through Ashes, and it's all of these people come together because of Ashes that were there. And that just meant so much to me. It meant absolutely so much to me. So to see just those little interactions take place is enough. But I would still love to see it become something that's enormous and become something more. So if it's possible, why not dream for it? But we'll see. I'm just excited. I'm just excited to see what the potential of it could become. The fact that it's still been something that excites you guys, it means a lot to me. And hopefully it's still exciting for a big part of the community. I've seen a lot of Ashes fan-created content since it went down a year ago, which has been really cool. New Phoenixborns that fans have released, and I never dreamed that would be possible. And seeing more and more people just being able to express themselves through something that I created is feels really good. And I really am hopeful for the potential future.
Well, let me tell you, so we've been doing a ton of these throwback streams. We've been doing games all throughout the 90s and 2000s, and of course modern games as well every week. And it's so striking how ahead of its time and how truly kind of underground revolutionary that game was. And I didn't even really appreciate it at the time. But when we now see it in the context of this timeline of, the very beginning to where we are now, it's like it really stands out as something that was a notable flag in the ground for design and aesthetics and characters, just the whole thing. So it's pretty amazing to kind of see how awesome it ultimately is and was at that time, and to bring it back now is fascinating. And the thing is, it still holds up. It's still ahead of its time in so many ways, which is exciting for us. I mean, that's really impressive that you're able to do that, Isaac. I was going to say, Nick, too. I mean, it's in your hands, right? I mean, you feel you got the pressure on you now. So a couple of years later, what is your ideal result for this Ashes 1.5 effort?
I mean, I would be so happy to see just communities coming back together around this game. I mean, I've met some of my closest friends and the coolest people specifically through Ashes. And I just want to keep interacting with those communities. I think it's such a great group of people that centers around these lifestyle games. And I just want to see that continue and to be able to contribute to growing the game that has created such a great group. It's just such an honor. Like, I can't believe I get to do this. This is the best. And yeah, just a dream come true.
I think that's fantastic, honestly. You know, I mean, for us, this is such a privilege to have a chance. Like we said earlier, not a lot of games get a second chance. And like, as we're looking back at all these games from the past 20 or 30 years on these streams, it's clear there's something special going on with Ashes on a lot of different layers. And, you know, we were there when it was happening. We'll be talking about it on the podcast this week. Of all the things Ashes got right, it's unfortunate the things that I think actually caused it to kind of go off the rails had really little to do. You see so many games getting the fundamentals wrong, and then the execution and the after and the business side and the production and everything going on that side. You don't even get to that chance because the beginning was bad. But there is something special going on with Ashes. And, you know, I think back, one of my fondest memories is Ashes weekend. That was an incredible event. A lot of great people. Isaac was here. I mean, it was just fantastic.
You guys were here.
And looking at all these cards, and like, after things started going down and everything was happening with Ashes, I really stopped paying attention. And then now looking back through cards, it's like the amount of content out there. And then like even doing this interview or talking with you guys, it's been fantastic because everything you're saying is the things we're identifying that these older games got wrong, right? So it is rare for a game and a community to have a second chance. And then for us to have some sort of part in this is just a total honor. So I'm so happy, and I'm very confident based on everything I've been hearing in this conversation specifically in the potential and future of this game. And then I assume a bunch of people watching this are going to feel the exact same way, and they're going to be excited about this and hopping on board. So I'm hopeful that we can you know, play our part and help you guys and help Plaid Hat bring this game back. I think of all the games we played, the games that deserve another shot, this is high on the list, right? So it's a total honor, and I'm excited to see what you guys do with it. I'm excited to see all the cards that you change for 1.5 and the rules changes and the clarity.
It's exciting stuff.
And excited to see where you take it after that.
I was going to say, before we get out of here, Isaac, I'm curious, what are you getting up to these days in terms of design? Like, we haven't even asked, I guess we should. What is your role in Ashes 1.5 at this point? Are you a loving observer, or do you have a voice in the process?
So I'm still involved as far as like the generation of characters, some assistance with art direction, and me and Nick communicate often, and we're talking about the changes. But really, it's in Nick's hands as to what we're seeing throughout all of the changes from the backlog. Moving forward, I would like to be, you know, kind of still like a little bit of a guiding hands, but I also understand that the expertise that Nick brings to the table and the understanding of the card pool is beyond what I am able to bring to it right now. And he has such a mind for this process. For me, like, it's always been a creative outlet. I love designing new characters. I love designing new combos, new decks, and things like that. Not saying that that's not a potential for my future, but I'm kind of in and out on that aspect. Nick is really the driving force moving forward, and I'm so glad that he's a part of this team because he's amazing at this aspect of it, and he really has the mind for being able to see those issues that will come up before they end up becoming issues, and fixing all of the issues that were in the past. So I'm so glad to have him on the team, and I'm always going to be a cheerleader in the background as well, moving forward. And, you know, being independent now gives me the flexibility to be as involved or as not involved as I need to be. Right now, having stepped away from Plaid Hat, I've decided to take a little bit more of a background seat in this role because I need to focus on building up another part of my career, another part of my future. But I still definitely want to have some control and some feedback, give some feedback as to how it's moving forward, because I am still very connected to Ashes.
Well, Isaac, we're super happy to hear that you're going to be involved in whatever way you will be involved, and truly wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
You definitely deserve it, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. And Nick, good luck. It sounds like it's in very good hands. You're saying all the right things, so we're super excited. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with us today. And let's do it. Ashes 1.5. It can happen. I think it will happen.
Rising from the
all right.
If anything is right in the world, let's do it. So thank you guys, and we will cut on back to the stream.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.